Over 30 hours after the attempted insurrection and 3 months after the election, U.S. President Donald Trump has now acknowledged Joe Biden's win. He has also changed his tone from previously telling the rioters he loved them to now calling the storming a heinous attack. A police officer has died of his injuries following clashes with the pro-Trump mob.
2 days late, fresh fortifications around the U.S. Capitol building after an angry mob invaded the altar of American democracy. Those who attacked journalists and police are now being attacked by their leader, who himself is under intense fire.
The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay. We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored.
America's next president, Joe Biden, lays the ugly insurrection squarely at Trump's feet.
He unleashed an all-out assault on our institutions of our democracy from the outset. And yesterday was but the culmination of that unrelenting attack.
Amid the aftermath, even former allies have called for Trump to be removed immediately.
Here's the truth. The president caused this. The president is unfit, and the president is unwell. And the president must now relinquish control of the executive branch voluntarily or involuntarily.
Mr. Vice President, would you...
But Vice President Mike Pence, who has the power to begin that process, has said he will not do so. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi is threatening to impeach Trump for a second time.
By inciting sedition, as he did yesterday, he must be removed from office. While it's only 13 days left, any day can be a horror show for America.
Members of Trump's administration have since resigned, including the Transportation Secretary and, most recently, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos.
They must fully open. For more on this, let's bring in Peter Matthews. He's a professor of political science at Cypress College in California. Mr. Matthews, good to have you with us. A clear change of tone there from Wednesday, when Donald Trump called those involved in the storming of the Capitol very special and said he loved them, to him now speaking out against the violence and saying there'll be an orderly transition. Tell us, how did this U-turn come about?
It's typical Donald Trump. He's done it so many times during the last 4 years. He'll say one thing, he'll reverse himself, he'll reverse the tone. It's all about himself. He wants to protect himself. He doesn't want to be the first president to be removed by the 25th Amendment, which was bound to happen the way things are going. And he just wanted to cover himself and decided to go ahead and be nice. I don't trust him one bit in terms of his change of tone, and I don't trust the people that followed him into the Capitol. He incited them to go to the Capitol at the noon lunch that he had. He had a speaking engagement there in front of thousands, and he told them to go in there, go to the Capitol. And he said, we've been cheated of the election, and he incited the violence, and now he's trying to play nice.
Pressure's clearly mounting on Trump. There's talk on Capitol Hill of impeachment or invoking the 25th Amendment. What do you believe will happen?
Difficult to predict because it's such a short time. We have less than 2 weeks left, and that time makes a difference. If out of the two, I don't think it's tough. The 25th Amendment is going to take a majority of the cabinet to vote to go ahead and change power from Trump to Pence. And if Trump objects, and even though the cabinet votes for it, then it goes to each house, and each house has to vote by a 2/3 majority to override Trump's objection, and then the power shifts to Pence. So that's a bit of a reach right now with just 10 days left. But the impeachment could occur if enough people are riled up in the Senate. The House will impeach him, but the Senate has to convict him. And last time they failed to do that. But now things have changed a lot since this insurrection. And let's call it what it was. It wasn't a riot. It wasn't something random, people having fun, drinking and getting drunk and breaking windows. This was a planned insurrection against a lawfully elected government administration and the processes of it. So that's what happened yesterday. And I don't know exactly what will happen, which of the two would happen. But people are riled up, and even Republicans and Democrats are calling for his resignation or removal.
It seemed that this attempted insurrection took police and security around the Capitol by surprise, but many reports suggest far-right social media users had been posting hints of their intentions. How could law enforcement ignore these signs?
That is a very puzzling question that has to be answered. It has to be investigated very deeply and carefully now to find out where things went wrong. Because how could these thousands of people enter the Capitol, take over the floor of the Senate, desecrate the place, and break the windows and get in and pick up papers from the desks of senators, and hardly anyone getting arrested? I mean, in the end, so far they're saying that 60 people were arrested or so. There were hundreds of people in that building, and yet why were the police not able to stop them? Why wasn't the National Guard sent in much earlier? And finally, Vice President Pence is the one who actually had to activate the National Guard, the D.C. National Guard. President Trump did not bring them in, and it was too long. The senators and congresspeople were lying on the floor, fearing for their lives. They were locked in. They were hiding in place. This is a total disgrace to the world and a very dangerous situation that has happened, and someone has to pay the price for this. Someone has to be held accountable for this. Absolutely.
All right, Peter Matthews, professor of political science at Cypress College in California. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Take care.
I'm joined now by Alexander Graf Lambsdorff, deputy leader of the Pre-Democratic Party in Germany's parliament, the Bundestag. He specializes in foreign policy. Mr. Lambsdorff, good to have you with us. Tell me, what do you make of the developments in Washington of the past 2 days?
Well, there's bad news and good news. The bad news is, of course, that we have 5 people dead as a consequence of these riots. The good news is that the mob failed to overturn the constitutional proceedings. Trump failed in his botched pseudo-coup attempt. And as a matter of fact, democracy won. I mean, rule of law won. Decency won in the end. We now have a finalized American election process. We have the prospect of Joe Biden being inaugurated, as is the due course of the American Constitution, on January the 20th, on the steps of the Capitol. So there's terrible news for the people who have passed away and their loved ones, but there's good news for American democracy.
Many people say they were shocked but not surprised. How about you?
That's exactly the way I feel. Having listened to Donald Trump over the years, having listened to him in the run-up to the election on November 3rd, you could see that he was planning things like this. When he says emotions are high after the election, well, he's the one who stoked the flames. He's the one who put in doubt the very date of the election. He's the one who declared his Democratic opponents enemies of the people. He is the one who is responsible for all of this. And so I have observed elections in many countries across the world, in Africa, in Asia. And whenever you see authoritarian figures trying to create a situation that is not purely constitutional, that is not cleanly electoral, they do exactly what the American president has done over the last couple of months. And then I watched his march, his rally, earlier, prior to the proceedings on Capitol Hill in the Senate chamber, and he clearly incited his followers to walk over to the Capitol and to start rioting. So there's absolutely no doubt that Mr. Trump is responsible for what happened there yesterday.
How do you see these events affecting the U.S. legitimacy in the promotion of democracy and democratic values around the world?
Well, it's been a shock to the system, there's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, as I just said, on the very same day that we saw the riots taking place in D.C. on the steps and inside the Capitol, in the state of Georgia, 2 opposition senators were elected into office. And Georgia is a state with a Republican administration. The governor is a Republican, the Secretary of State is a Republican, the man who leads the election process is a Republican, but they duly and correctly certified the Democratic winners of their senatorial race, which means that Joe Biden now has a majority both in the House and in the Senate. To me, that says that Mr. Trump will be gone, but American democracy will remain strong, and with it also American credibility when it comes to talking about democracy. Yes, it was a shock. Yes, it has done some damage, but by and large, looking at the bigger picture, I see American democracy having come out as the victor of this of these terrible images there.
Despite it all, could you see this incident emboldening right-wing extremists in other countries?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we have seen similar images in Germany, if you recall. In August, we had a group of people storming the German parliament building. They did not make it inside, but we had very similar images, flags of the right-wing extremists, of nationalists, of populist, racist types who were trying to storm the capital to create, the Reichstag building, the German parliament building, because they feel that parliamentary democracy is not, what they want. They want an authoritarian form of government. And yes, of course, democracies are vulnerable around the world. Every Democrat, whether you're left, center, or right, needs to be very clear that the other people whom you compete with in democratic competition are not your enemies, they are your legitimate competitors. And if we can agree on that, if we can convince more people in our population, including those who have been seduced by radical ringleaders, then I think democracy will come out strengthened. But yes, democracy is under pressure and we have to fight back.
Alexander Graf Lambsdorff, Deputy Chair of the FDP Parliamentary Group here in Germany. Many thanks.
Thank you.